Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden. I'm the host of this program. Well, we're taping this show on the 14th of December, and what the importance of this day is the day that the electors on all 50 states plus Washington, D.C., go to their, in the case of Washington, it would be the municipal building, but go to their state houses and cast their electoral votes. And of course, under our system, it is the Electoral College that elects the president. And so today, Mr. Biden and Mrs. Harris, or Ms. Harris rather, should get 306 electoral votes. And he will be officially, well, I won't say officially, he'll become the president-elect officially today. And the results of the Electoral College, of course, they have to go before Congress, be certified by Congress. I believe that'll be around the 6th of January. And of course, on the 20th, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris take their oaths of office. And of course, the inauguration this year is going to be a little bit different. There's not going to be any big inaugural parade. And just where the inauguration will take place is pretty much up in the air, whether it's going to be in the usual place at the Capitol or whether it'll be a low-key ceremony, maybe taking place in the House of Representatives or something like that. But there won't be the huge, large gatherings that have been there in previous years. Now, we've had low-key inaugurations before. For example, 1944, World War II, Franklin Roosevelt took the oath of office for his fourth term in the East Room of the White House. Ronald Reagan, his second term, 1985, I don't exactly know the reason why, but he took his oath of office also in the East Room of the White House. And of course, Jerry Ford, who succeeded Richard Nixon, took his oath of office in the White House. So it's, it's not unprecedented. Now, whether the outgoing president will hang around and participate in the inauguration of a successor, probably not. I doubt it very much. The idea of hanging around, and being there and being part of the inaugural of your successor is something that, well, it came in more or less after the Civil War. For example, when Thomas Jefferson was elected third president of the United States, he rode his horse in, got off his horse, went in the Capitol, took the oath of office. John Adams, his predecessor, was so angry at losing the election that he and his wife Abigail had left Washington the day before and returned home to Massachusetts. And there are other incidences where the outgoing president has not stayed around to welcome the incoming president. In 2016, despite the fact that there's a lot of animosity between the two of them, as you know, Barack Obama and Joe Biden were at Trump's inauguration. And he was saying to show this continuity from one administration to another. And that, of course, is something that has sort of come apart this year with Trump's unwillingness to admit his loss, which he still hasn't, and arrange for the transfer of power from his administration to the Biden administration. And I would hope that the people that voted for Donald Trump realize the huge mistake that they have made, that this guy was not mature enough to be president. He's like a little kid. He lost the election. He doesn't want to admit it. And he keeps talking about fraud and rigged election, the most crooked election in history and all that. The most crooked election in history was probably 2016. when we had all this interference from the Soviet Union, from China and everything else, or it wasn't the Soviet Union, but Russia. And they more or less helped Trump be elected, plus the Democrats didn't have the best possible candidate going. I think people had pretty well had their fill of the Clintons. And she didn't resonate with the laboring class, which the Democrats need to win an election. But that has been reversed here in 2020. You know, if Biden had won in 2016, we never would have gone through the 4 years of turmoil and disruption and mismanagement that we had under Trump. But he decided he was grieving for the death of his son, Beau, and he just wasn't up to making a run for the presidency. So 4 years later, he's come back. He's been successful. He pulled more popular votes than any of his predecessors, and that is because we probably had the greatest turnout. When you look at certain situations, there are some good things that come out of bad situations. And something I think that we ought to keep and incorporate, and that is being able to vote by mail. The tremendous turnout this year, the greatest we've ever had. People voting by mail, able to vote from home, vote by absentee ballot. And also, people wanted to change. The majority of people wanted to change. They were sick and tired of living under a fascist type administration. And a man who, in his own mind, if he could have, would have established himself as a dictator. Certainly he had ambitions in that direction of being the supreme commander, which is why he's having trouble admitting he lost. It goes against his idea that patriotism was loyalty to him, not to the country, to him, which means he didn't understand patriotism at all. And of course, having lost the election, threatening to fire people. For example, a memo that went out to all the civilian employees that work in the administration and government. The word was that if any of them started looking for another job, they'd be fired immediately. Well, at this point in time, many of the Republican office holders are going to be out of a job in another month and a half anyway. So Trump wants to fire him. What difference does it make? After 12 noon on the 20th of January, he won't have that authority anymore. If he's still in the White House, he'd be a trespasser. So today is the day the Electoral College does its job and will confirm the election, the choice of the people, the election of Joe Biden as the 46th president, and Kamala Harris as the first woman vice president in the United States. And that also brings up another first. What about her husband? Well, obviously he can't be the first gentleman. That honor belongs to the president. So as the husband of the vice president, I imagine he will be the first to hold the title of second gentleman. Somebody's going to have to coin that title for him. He'll be the second gentleman. And of course, they will reside at the vice presidential residence. And we haven't heard too much about the transition in the vice presidential level, whether Mr. Pence has decided, well, Trump can't do anything for me anymore, and decides to stand up and be a man and invites Kamala Harris and her husband to take a tour of the vice presidential residence where she will be living, at least for the next 4 years. And then possibly in 2025, will be moving into the White House. At that time, her husband would become the first gentleman. So the constitutional process grinds on, it works, it's been challenged, probably more challenged this time than it ever has been in any other election. And each challenge that the Trump people have made has been rejected. And I think, there was a lot of discussion with the three justices that Trump got appointed to the Supreme Court, including the latest there with Mrs. Barrett, pushing her through because back of his mind, he was not sure, but he thought if he put 3 people on the Supreme Court with the 3 former conservatives that are already there, if he went to the Supreme Court would elect them. Well, of course, that was tried, and the Supreme Court shut the door on him at 7-2. And it's interesting that the 3 justices that he appointed were part of that 7-2 majority that slammed the door on his efforts to get the election of 2020 overturned. The 2 that supported him, one was Clarence Thomas, who was appointed by George H.W. Bush and never should have been and shouldn't be on the Supreme Court. And the other one escapes, I can't figure it, but he was also a Republican appointee. But 7-2, leaves no doubt which way the Supreme Court stands. And I think a lot of worries that people had about how a conservative court would act in supporting the incumbent president, where they feel a loyalty to the man that appointed the Supreme Court. They put the Constitution and they go to the country first. And so we move on. And the old saying is, time marches on. The Constitution has prevailed. And it will continue to prevail. And it'll be in much better shape under the new administration than it was under the current one. I don't think Trump ever understood that there was a Constitution, that was the law of the land. I don't think that ever entered his fogged out brain. And if you look at all the people that he had, his big rallies, his Secret Service security people, many people in his administration, look at all the ones that have tested positive for COVID-19, including his crackpot lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. Old Rudy, he headed up the effort to get this election overturned, and at every single court, every place where they tried to go, it was thrown out. Not enough substantial evidence. And, it is time for many of these Republican politicians to say, hey, that's it. Trump is dead. He's gone. We don't need to be afraid of him anymore. Stand up. Speak up for yourselves. Even the minority leader in the House of Representatives there, Representative Kennedy from California, still supporting Trump. Come on, guys. The Attorney General, who was one of Trump's most loyal supporters, he kind of came close to going on the chopping block. When the FBI investigated the elections and, I should say the Justice Department, and said he found no evidence of any fraudulent voting. Well, old Trumpy didn't like to hear that. And he talked for a while, well, maybe this guy's got to go. Maybe I'll fire him. Well, the country sent a message to Trump. The majority of people in this country have fired Mr. Trump. And we've come to our senses. We're going to claim the country. We're going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're going to get re-involved in world affairs. We're going to once again be friendly with our allies. And we're going to become a world power. We sort of lost that a little bit this past administration, despite all his talk. And his admiration for the dictators of the world. Certainly, he never contradicted Putin in any way, shape, or manner. Very, very friendly with the fat little chubby guy from North Korea. And he had admiration, I think, for anybody that was a dictator. Certainly, he has the Mussolini pose down to perfection. And you couldn't help but those of us who could recall Mussolini from back in World War II in Italy and the way his poses, and see the way Trump posed many, many times, see a very, very strong resemblance. Some of people are talking about his supporters and how they're going to react. And that is going to be a problem. Got a lot of crackpots. They found their leader in Mr. Trump. And that's why you got these neo-Nazi groups running around with weapons. And I'm sure you're going to see a lot of violence as administrations change. But the country's got to get back to normal. And we have to deal with these nitwits. You have a lot of small militias, especially out and around Montana and Idaho and Wyoming. And supposedly there's even a small group down in West Paulet, Vermont, that have revolution on their mind. Trump lost the election, they're going to cause trouble. Well, you don't know how much trouble they are going to cause. And if they do, it will be shut down real quick. Fortunately, our governor, Governor Scott, is a Republican, he's an American, and he's done just a great job leading us through this pandemic. And he's also a man with a lot of common sense, and he has spoken out against these efforts of the Trump administration to stay in office, that they don't make sense, and they don't. Every one of them was doomed for failure, and every one of them went down in failure, including the final push with the Supreme Court. And still, old Trumpy keeps saying the election was rigged, the election was false. Well, I think seeing our chief executive in that first Democratic debate, or presidential debate rather, the way he acted there like a 2-year-old out of control, and the way he's acted ever since losing the election. You know, anybody who's got a brain in their head, and of course many of Trump's followers, their problem is they don't have a brain in their head. You've got to say, you know, what's the matter with this guy? What's he trying to do? What's he trying to do to the country? He's trying to undermine our Constitution. He's trying to undermine the values of the country. He lost the election, conceded, stepped, and agreed to assist with a orderly transition. When Trump won the election in 2016, the Obama administration immediately made arrangements for an orderly transition from one administration to another. In fact, President Obama phoned Trump at about 2 a.m. in the morning, probably got him out of bed if he was in bed at that time, to congratulate him on his win. And shortly thereafter, Mr. and Mrs. Trump paid a visit to the White House, where the Obamas greeted him, showed him around what their living quarters would be and everything else. Of course, Trump has not extended that to his successor, Joe Biden. But I imagine Joe is pretty familiar with the White House anyway, all the years he served in the Senate, and his 8 years as vice president. Spent a lot of time there with Barack Obama and his wife, Jill and Michelle were very close friends. It's going to be rather interesting that the new First Lady plans to continue to teach her high school class in Wilmington, Delaware. Now, whether she's going to remain at the family home in Delaware or whether she's going to commute from Washington remains to be seen. And this situation, how she will teach her class. Is it going to be person to person? Is it going to be through Zoom, or just how it's going to work out? It'll be rather interesting that she does not plan to retire and does not plan to be strictly First Lady of Washington, D.C. She plans to continue her career as a teacher. And that's rather interesting. Now, when we get to the second gentleman, he's an attorney, and it'll be interesting how he's going to continue his career. His wife, of course, being the Vice President of the United States. And it's going to be an interesting time when the new administration takes office to see how it settles in. Now, it won't be too difficult because many of Joe Biden's administration served in the Obama administration. So they've been out of office 4 years. They're going to come back in. For example, the Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vlasic from Nebraska, served 8 years as Secretary of Agriculture in the Obama administration. Now he's going to be coming back and serving in the Biden administration. And probably when Joe steps down in 4 years and Kamala Harris takes over as our first woman president, he may continue on there for another 8 years, which would probably be a record for the office of Secretary of Agriculture. But many of Joe Biden's other appointees have already had experience in government, having served in the Obama administration, and are now coming back for a second shot. So we look forward to a change, and a change for the better. I know when you lose, sometimes you can be bitter. But I think it's a test of a man, when you lose, to be able to stand up and lose with grace. You can win with grace, and you can also lose with grace. And that pretty much tells you what you're made of. And I think we're seeing what Mr. Trump is made of, and it's not something we'd want to pass on to our children, that's for sure. Grew up like that. He's a very, very poor example to the youth of this country. Very poor. Well, moving from politics into daily life, you look around at some of our sports fields, for example, let's take the NFL. Games that have had to been canceled because of COVID-19. At the college level, a huge game between Ohio State and Michigan. This has been a traditional game every year, had to be canceled because the way the COVID-19 is going through the Michigan football team. They weren't able to field a football team to tackle Ohio State. The Big Ten Championship, which was a very short season because it got going late. Originally, they weren't going to play any football at all. Then they decided, what the heck, if Notre Dame can do it, maybe the rest of us can. So the Big Ten Championship game, I believe, is going to be this coming Friday night between Ohio State and Northwestern. Now, people look around and say, well, who's Northwestern? Well, Northwestern is a member of that conference, and this year they've had a very good year. They are undefeated. They won the Western Division of the so-called Big Ten, which should actually be the Big 14. And they and Ohio State will be playing in Indianapolis, I believe, Friday night. I think it's Friday night, Friday or Saturday night, for the Big Ten championship. Now, for Ohio State, they're currently ranked number 4 in the nation. And if they win, they will be participating in the national playoffs as the number 4 seed. Another more important game that is going to take place on Saturday night will be the championship of the Atlantic Coast Conference, where Notre Dame, undefeated and ranked number 2, is going to have a rematch with Clemson. And their regular season game at Notre Dame, it went double overtime with Notre Dame winning it 47-40. This one's going to be played in Charlotte, North Carolina. A rematch between Clemson and Notre Dame. A Notre Dame win gives Clemson 2 defeats and pretty well knocks them out of the picture. Moves Ohio State up to number 3, and, well, it could be Iowa State, which has surprised everyone in winning the so-called Big 12, which is now the Big 10, with only 10 teams in the Big 12. It could be Iowa State in as the number 4 seed. On the other hand, if Northwestern beats Ohio State, they could be the number 4 seed. Or move up to number 3 if Notre Dame beats Clemson again. So you would have Alabama playing whoever's number 4, and I think that'll take place in New Orleans. The Rose Bowl this year will probably be the number 2, if it's Notre Dame, against whoever's number 3. And that's another situation. You know, for years we've had too many postseason bowl games in college football. We had the Potato Bowl and the Music Bowl. Just too many. So many, in fact, that a team could get in that would be 6-6 or 6-7 and be playing in a bowl game where they had no business being in a game. Even at a bowl game played in New York City. It was called the Tuxedo Bowl at one time, the Pinstripe Bowl, because it played at Yankee Stadium. You know, it was ridiculous. A team that could go 6-6 got into a bowl season game. Well, I think this year it's only going to be the top 4. That'll be in the Sugar Bowl and in the Rose Bowl. And they'll be played New Year's Day. And then I think a week later will be the college championship game. And I believe that is probably going to be played at AT&T Stadium in Texas. So that'll be the wrap-up on the college season. Everything has been low-key. You know, here in Vermont for football season, we went to 7-man football, non-contact. And, well, everybody wondered how it would work out, and it worked out of sorts. There weren't any state champions crowned or anything like that. A lot of old traditions went down the tubes. For example, now we're having Christmas, and I know in many of the Catholic churches, because attendance has to be limited, you're going to have a ticket to go to Christmas Mass. Well, a lot of families, they might not go to church all year, but they do go to church on Christmas, Easter, and somewhat on Ash Wednesday, start of Lent. Well, many families that want to go, things are going to be a little short this year. I know St. Peter Church, which has a seating capacity of around 900, is going to be limited to 140. You're going to have 3 masses, and the limit number of people that will be able to go will be 140. So you have to have a ticket to be admitted to Mass on Christmas. And I would imagine it's the same in other churches too, where your Christmas service is going to be limited and you're going to have a ticket or a pass to get in. And it's one of the signs of our times, the sign of this year. Hopefully, even though this will be a low-key season, that things will be better in another year. The Medicine is out and will soon be distributed. With that, may Almighty God continue to bless these United States of America. God love you. Have a great week, and we'll see you all next week.